Good morning. You're watching the raw, unedited version of the Sunday Morning Linux Review. To listen to the final version of our show, please go to smlr.us. Thank you. In case you're wondering the sudden change in music, it's because we are without our soundboard, our Sunday Morning Linux Review soundboard this morning due to some technical difficulties.
Technical or mental difficulties?
Mental difficulties.
Buffer full alert.
Right.
So anyway, the final version will have these spliced in at the appropriate time. Tony, you're going to probably have to keep track of that too.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I'll have to.
Do you want me to put
It'll give me an extra few minutes. No, I'll remember when I go to edit this time that I need to put that in there.
Well, you know what we could do is we should leave maybe 5-second or 10-second space, and then you can just see it in the Audacity stream.
Oh yeah.
You know, that's how you could quickly find it.
Okay, I think it's a good idea.
Okay, well, you know where this one goes at the beginning, so we don't have to do it now.
Right.
All right, well, all right, so imagine that it's just finishing up now.
All right, and this is episode 181.
Soundboard.
Soundboard, that's right. Except for we didn't talk about the name, what it was going to be.
Well, until we couldn't figure out the soundboard.
Right.
No, what was the name, did we?
No, I
That's-
don't.
It's soundboard now.
So I like it.
So that's why I think on my feet.
We thought we knew where all the buttons were.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're working out
We didn't know where
details.
what menu was.
So
That's
anyway,
And this is Tony Bemis.
Mary Tomich.
In Town Lawrence.
All right. So
Where do we want to start?
it's like we go to a new place and we forget everything.
Right. Yeah. Even though last week we kind of figured out where the buttons were, today I actually had to run it myself.
Mhm.
So it took us a few extra minutes to get everything on the right channels and everything. So we're good to go, I think.
I think so. Well, I guess we're going to do a quick catch up and then we'll move into the next thing.
All right.
All right.
So Mary, what did you do the last couple weeks?
Well, I'll tell you what I did. Actually, I wrote it down so I wouldn't forget. I'm getting to be that age. Actually, I was in class. I was in an options class for financial markets, so I can learn how to make money even if the market goes down. So, so I think it's very timely that I was in that class. So I did that, but on a technical basis, I was at the Semi-Bug meeting, which is the Southeast Michigan BSD user group meeting, and this one was kind of interesting. It was a little bit over my head at times because one of the guys from he works at the I believe it's Altair Engineering up in Troy. He talked about the BSD underpinnings on Juniper, and so it did kind of leave me behind a little bit. But I guess that's how you learn. You know, when you're out of your comfort zone and you just kind of hear this stuff. So
Yeah.
I'm sure I could point out a Juniper box when I see it. But anyway,
It has blue on it, right?
yeah.
Yeah, and it's real expensive.
Right.
Yeah. So that was good. And then next month, Michael Lucas is going to be talking about free BSD file system fund, which I think will be interesting for anybody who happens to be up near Troy and wants to attend. And then the following month, our very own Tom Lawrence.
Oh,
which is
yeah.
on April 19th.
I'm supposed to talk.
Yeah, I hope you don't forget. Anyway, but yeah, they're looking forward to that. PFSM, she'll be talking about PFSM.
Yes, and I'm working on updating that because I've my video has a few comments because I did it a year ago and there's been a couple minor changes, but there's been some changes. So I got to make it out. I'm getting ready to update all that.
Yeah, well, you'll appreciate it. I'm assuming that we'll be having it at the same facility, but it's got the it's got everything, so you'll
love that.
You'll appreciate that. So yeah, so that's what I did. And then the other thing I did, I have two external hard drives that are chock full of music, and there's quite a bit of duplication across both of them. But what I wanted to do was to eliminate that. So of course I turned to the very trusty diff command. And by just using diff with a couple of options, R and Q, which I think one means to go in recursively and check because, you know, I've got maybe the artist and then an artist might have more than one album. And then also just to only print the differences or just to kind of, I didn't want it verbose, in other words. So what I ended up with, and it took a couple hours to do it, because I had that much music,
Mm.
is a great list of about 80 different albums that are on one but not the other. So now what I'm doing is I'm going through and I'm making sure that it's completely, completely by its, a complete set, I should say. And if I had more script information, I could probably write a script that would just do that for me. But
Right.
yeah, maybe that'll be my next project. So anyway, that's kind of what I did the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, you could have that diff come out and then
Mhm.
say copy whatever the difference is from
Yes.
one to the other, and it'll make it the same.
And-
Or rsync will do that all for you. It'll check what's already there and copy across.
That would be that'd be an interesting thing to try, just to see if I could get it to work from the command line on my own.
Yeah.
I think there's also, and I have to look in my archives, I have a deduplication script written in Bash that looks for duplicates based on CRC checksums and finds all the files are the same.
Mhm.
That way, when you have repositories you're trying to merge, you can go, hey, look, all this is the same data. So it helps consolidate everything. Because I've
Yeah.
had that problem in the past when I was
Mhm.
moving some data servers around. And I said, why do I have more of one of these? And why am I storing things in too many places? And it helps me sort all that out.
Yeah, and that's really what I was trying to do here. I mean, I really want to have a copy and then a backup. And so I was just kind of going through that process manually. And I mean, and that is fine, but I think using rsync, that would have been much more effective.
Yeah.
All right, good thing to find that out after the fact. Next time I do it, I'll know.
Yeah.
So anyway, but that's the exciting things that were in my life the last couple of weeks.
Nice.
So it's new to you, Tony.
Talking about presentations, I've got 2 coming up here in the next couple months.
Mhm.
One is due in 2 weeks, so I've got to get working on that presentation slides.
What's it about? Have you written the
It's-
text general? You just gotta
Yeah, I got
put
the
the bullet
abstract.
points on.
I have like a one sentence abstract. I'm going to be giving it
That's
as
as far as you got.
yeah, that's as far as I got.
It'll be quick.
I've got it's going to be at Mug
Oh, okay.
in 2 to 3 weeks, whatever
Oh, maybe I'll go
the
to that
second
one.
Tuesday. Yeah,
What's it about?
it's going to be on offensive security and
And I'll just be out there
countermeasures.
clapping, just to
Right.
be supportive.
Basically, what it's going to be is I'm going to talk a little bit about my class and what security professionals are the overall goals.
Mhm.
And then I'm going to demonstrate a few of the tools that Kelly has, Kelly Linux.
Is that the 8th?
I believe so.
Okay, second Tuesday, right?
Yes, second
Okay.
Tuesday.
Okay.
Yeah,
Did you say Kelly Linux?
yeah. So actually, I was listening through what you'd done. I'm like, oh, I should talk about that tool. And so
Yeah, as I said during that review, there are just dozens of tools.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I was very impressed. If I were really into the security, as far as a researcher and security tester, that type of thing, man, Kali Linux would be my distro of choice.
yeah,
But
yeah. And
I
then
rely on others for that now.
right. And then along with those attacks, I'm going to be demonstrating is how to keep yourself safe, so you don't become a victim of those
Mhm.
attacks.
Mhm.
And then for PenguinCon, I have a talk that I'm doing. It's security for the lay geek.
Security for the what?
Lay geek.
Oh, lay geek.
Oh, that reminds me, I never emailed Kevin back. I'm gonna do that probably in a minute.
Right.
The lay geek, as opposed to, what's a lay geek?
I don't know. It's just like the layman instead of.
Who happens, like
Yeah.
myself,
You
who's
know-
sort of an informal geek?
Well, it's a geek that's not very techy, or that's not.
I guess that would be me, no.
So at PenguinCon, I don't know
Mm-hmm.
if I'm sure our listeners have heard us talk about it many times, but it's a mix of sci-fi and technology and tech, like open source
Oh,
Linux
it's the
stuff.
sci-fi folks.
So yeah, that's why I'm trying to pull in a
Oh,
couple of the
okay. I hate
sci-fi people
sci-fi.
and how to. But then it'll bring in some of the newbies that don't already have their own firewall running at home and,
Mhm.
and things like that. But it's going to go beyond just securing your own home network. It's going to be more just overall security guidelines. Things like patch your systems.
Mhm.
So I registered for PenguinCon the other day, and I got ribbons for myself. So if you're not a PenguinCon goer, you can get these ribbons. And there's people that walk around that are they call them ribbon whores. where they try to.
They just collect as many
They
ribbons as
just
possible.
collect them. Yeah, and then there's people that made entire vests out of ribbons and stuff throughout the years.
I try to make sure that mine has no ribbons on it, except I had our ribbon for our podcast.
Yeah, well, you're gonna have to have a second one on there.
I think I have to register. Did I register?
You might need to. If you have over 3 hours of presentation time, then you can get a discount.
Okay.
So if like our show is 2 hours plus one more plus one other talk would be the 3 hours. So I signed up under that one. So Tom, you should be able to sign up under that too.
Okay.
As long as you got to verify that you were qualified or you're accepted.
Yeah, that's why I gotta email Kevin.
Yeah.
If you're listening, Kevin, email me and in case I forget.
He did email me back, say I was accepted.
Okay.
So I think we're good. So yeah.
I'm only doing the podcast with you guys. I'm not doing any other talk this year.
Oh, okay.
Well, next year I'll come up with something.
All right. So yeah, that's what my upcoming weeks are going to be like. So Tom, what's up with you?
Well, I've had my business and entrepreneur hat on a little bit. So did a big presentation for, I do these a couple times a year. It's I do some educational tools and tech tools essentially for businesses. And I had about 30 business owners show up to my last talk, put a big presentation together of things you can use in your business. I talk about LastPass and other different tools to help them. And at the same time, I'm almost done with my Goldman Sachs class, which is the Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Business Program. If anyone wants to look that up, it's basically like an accelerator program for existing businesses to help them grow. And we had to finalize our plans and do the pitches. So I had my pitch put together, and my final pitch is due in a couple of weeks. So I got to put together a 3-slide pitch deck to sell my company, so to speak, and sell my ideas. What makes the class interesting too is it's not like I'm pitching this to teachers. I'm pitching it to investors. That's who came and did our training. We had, I think it was 13 investment people come in there. They range from banks to a couple different Michigan fundings and CDFIs. So you had these funding companies come in. So they're not trainers. These are people who actually do this for a living.
Was one of those funders, is it like Michigan Funders, something or other?
Yes.
Because I have an LLC that invests in things. And what my LLC did, because they're funding, there was a fundraising effort for the Detroit City Football Club, which is a soccer group, and they've outgrown the field at Cass Tech, so they want to renovate the field in Hamtramck. And for those not familiar with it, Hamtramck is a little city that's surrounded by Detroit, which sounds sort of scary, but it's actually a pretty cool little town. And so I did invest in that,
and he's part of my class. He's a great guy.
Yeah, and I just emailed them because I never got the fully executed set of documents. I mean, I signed off on it. I just need to get it back from them. So, cool. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, he was giving out scarves and stuff.
The Detroit City guy?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, he's the owner. He's there. He's in my class with me. He's one of the other business cohorts.
Oh, really?
So yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm supposed to get one of those scarves.
Oh yeah, I'll ask him where they're at.
Yeah, ask him where my scarf is. No, I'm kidding. It'll happen when it happens. I just want to make sure I get my money back with interest.
Absolutely.
Right. And I also saw that your talk was in the same city I live in.
Yes.
So it was just around the block, about a mile or so away.
Yeah. One of my clients is the Denver Federal Credit Union, and they sponsor me. So they sponsor the talks and help put them together for me. So they're one of my clients. And so other than that, my company's been just really busy doing stuff. We're trying to focus on putting out more videos. I've been training my employees now to start shooting YouTube videos for stuff because I have trouble keeping up with the production schedule to keep getting more and more stuff out there. And I want to focus on more of the Linux and open source things like the Caden Live I've been putting off and slowly putting videos together for. So now that I can get my employees who are going to start doing some of the other work, I can then focus on that. So
wow, busy guy.
Staying busy. It's hard to stay focused sometimes because I jump around a lot, but
tell me about it.
But it's kind of fun at the same time too. I enjoy what I do. So. And I think I mentioned it last time, we're still filming stuff for our little comedy group we call the Detroit Yodeling Company. So that's a whole nother idea we came up with to start shooting some comedy stuff. And it's just we want to laugh. That's all. There's no purpose for it. It doesn't have a business model behind it. It's me and one of my friends and several of our friends so we can shoot dumb videos and do dumb things.
Well, that sounds like fun.
That's all it's about, is just laughing. And the name's whimsical. There's no, is there was, when we post a couple videos, people are like, where's the yodeling? I'm like, there isn't any. It's completely a whimsical name. We're never going to address why we call it that, and we're never going to yodel.
Well, it's like the Detroit Drunken Historical Society.
Yeah.
Where they get together and they will tour, they'll get together, have, supper and drink. Well, I mean, not just like drink to oblivion, but I mean, they'll sup and then they go out and tour something.
Yeah.
And it's kind of cool.
Yeah.
But the
sounds fun,
name
though.
is, crazy. So,
I know I want to get into that too.
yeah.
I love history.
All right. So I guess we'll move on to,
Listener feedback.
8, 6, 4, 2. Okay, you'll find that.
All right.
So folks who are viewing or listening to this right now live,
We're leaving blank spots for
we're
Tony.
leaving blank spots for Tony.
Yeah.
I didn't know if you remembered or if you were just looking at me like, what are you going to say?
No, actually, I did remember. I was thinking that that sound, that blank spot beforehand would been the blank, but
Oh,
gives us even extra.
yeah. All right, well, we'll figure it out.
All right. So listener feedback.
Yes,
We had a few emails, and
Yes, we did.
Mary, you had one come in, right?
yes, I did. As a matter of fact, I was excited to get this email, to get any listener feedback. Yes, this came from, I believe it was Anders, and it was in response to my discussion about Google Fi and my trip where I used Google Maps to go from Detroit to South Carolina. And, the whole purpose of that discussion was just to kind of talk about how Fi and it's the two networks it uses, which is T-Mobile and Sprint, kind of work together to get me from point A to point B, and how I could tell when, and you guys remember when I was discussing how I could tell when it was switching from one network to another, the map would kind of just sort of like flip and reorient. But it happened very quickly. I just knew, okay, something just changed, but hey, I'm still on my route. But what Anders was talking about is he says, I know you, he says here, I know you weren't really going into a navigation review when you made the comment about your trip in episode 177, but you mentioned using Google Maps for a long trip. He says he loves Google Maps. Anders continues on and says he loves Google Maps for local usage, but on long trips he prefers to use, and it's OSM and OSMAD?
OSM and D.
Okay, OSM. Thank you.
I think it's open source maps and direction.
Okay.
Or something like that.
Yeah, and he then mentioned it was available in the F-Droid, I believe it is.
Yeah, the F-Droid
F-Droid
repository.
repository. So, and I think my phone, I don't have third-party repositories activated.
Mm-hmm.
Mainly for security reasons. But I know that the F-Droid one has been around for a while. So I think what I'm going to do is take one of my many extra phones, surplus phones, and give that a try and check it out.
Yeah. It's interesting that when people talk about the security of their devices or their phones now, that a lot of that comes up is, is malware available, or are they going to attack your phone? And it seems to be more of a discussion or a critique on the App Store instead of the actual phone security. Can malware get installed through the App Store? And so that's where Google has gotten a lot of flack that because it's such an automated system that some things get through, where Apple has less things that get through.
That's what I've,
because it's more strict.
That's what I've seen.
So that makes me wonder about F-Droid. Is that, how is that managed? Is there a board that sits and watches those things come through, or?
And I'm interested to dig into that too, because that is a deep question. And with any of our phones, is what's installing on there and what is it getting access to?
Right. And I think it's a little bit different with the F-Droid, because the average person that's going to be using F-Droid already has some kind of reason to go somewhere else, or to have, and they're security conscious already. So you're not going to be just installing any random app that's on the App Store.
You're going to look for a reputable one.
Yeah.
and Apple has done a fairly good job of policing their systems, but as I think a few months ago, some fundamental flaws were noted because a large spyware company got installed on as a kit. Their development kit got installed because lots of people use it for their ad systems in a Chinese firm, it exposed some fundamental flaws in the Apple system that even their automated system couldn't catch. So it is a big deal.
And along those lines, last year I installed something called Snoop Wall privacy app.
Oh, yeah.
And what I like about it is that it tells you which apps have which kinds of permissions, where you'll see it. If you're installing an app, it's going to give you the list. And I think, my God, this app is asking for too much. And there have been times where I thought, I don't want that app because it wants everything. And I think it tends to be sloppy developers who don't really take the time to find out the minimum things needed rather than just kind of go for the whole thing.
Right.
But the way the Snoop Wall privacy app has it set up is it tells me I've got 37 apps with location permissions. I have 39 apps with permissions to act for the user. So what that means is that for example, now, and I talked to the guy who did the app for our community association because it's on in the Google Play and I think also in the iPhone store. There are two critical permissions that allow apps to take user actions like make phone calls and send text. I talked to him about that and he said, yeah, that it was he converted the iPhone app. There's apparently a conversion utility or program that will take iPhone apps and convert them to Android apps, and he just kind of took he used that in order to make it compatible in Android, and he said he didn't know what he was doing. I said, okay, well,
yeah,
I could tell, because
Right.
That's usually what, when I see that. So my plan is to uninstall that app because I just don't think it needs that kind of permission.
Right.
But anyway, so I really like that Snoop Wall on my phone. So. Because it tells me, it groups it, it takes that information and groups it in a way that you can then look at very quickly. So, okay, I think we're still on listener feedback, but we veered into some other area.
I saw two other listener feedbacks come through, and one was from Gary White. Did you see that one, Tom? Because it was talking a little bit about what we were talking about a few episodes back on 178.
That's the one that bounced.
Okay, it says that I've been very impressed with the content in the shows lately, and 178 really stood out for me. Because he works at a small municipality.
Yes, okay, I did see that one now. I know what you're talking about. That's one you had to forward to me though, because you said me and Mary didn't get it.
Yeah, I didn't see that until you forwarded it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So did you guys get to read through it? This is great.
Wait a minute, we
This
gotta
is
keep
great
talking
noise.
because if there's that pause in there, it's time to cut it. Insert some music. I will say that I did not read it in depth because I was busy reading. Okay, here's my excuse. Excuse alert. I was reading Michael Lucas's book, FreeBSD Mastery Specialty File Systems.
Oh yeah.
Because I just got it on Tuesday.
Oh yeah.
And, in our next published episode, which will be the Fresh Looks, we'll be talking a little bit about that.
Yeah, no problem.
So that's my excuse. I didn't have time to really go in depth with that email.
Yeah. So basically, he was saying that that unfortunately that there's some policies that the clerk or programs the clerk has to use is forced to run on Windows. So they're not able to take some of the open source. But there's a lot of open source Windows apps, or web-based apps.
But it points to the fundamental problem of if the government mandated, because like I talked about in our previous Fresh Looks, is because all the cities work the same, if you started a fundamental movement at each state level, whether the city is one Detroit or any other city, you still collect property taxes in the same way, you still collect a water bill in the same way. You could make an open source equivalent and do a pay once, and it would have, obviously those policies have to come down from the state level and be pushed down to the city levels. No one city could take it out as a project, but when you think about the money spent and the resources spent on all these different softwares and things like that, it's not the best model for government services. So he's really highlighting the fundamental problem. You're right, they can't just use it because of policies, but that's why you got to go up a level.
Right.
You know, you got to get all the way to the state level. And we allegedly have a tough nerd running this state, but
Well, he's busy fixing Flint's water.
yeah, we're not ready to drink his Kool-Aid yet. But unfortunately, I was really hoping he would be more of an advocate of such things because it would be a major state costing, but he's really never touched on the topic or even gotten into it at all. Not that I can find, but it would be a pretty awesome thing to see. And we're seeing it in the European world. So we're seeing some of the governments adopt it and go, this is a good idea.
Yes.
So he's right. Mr. White was right. He's pointing out the fundamental problem of we can't just change it here at this level. And that comes to the basics. You got to start at the top, create some edicts that go, this is how we're going to move forward with this and move into it.
I agree.
You know, my nephew got a job at the state in the security area.
Oh, you did?
Yeah. I'll have to,
Okay,
I
cool.
should ask him how much Linux is being used up there.
Right. All right. And we got another email from Frank Bell. And he says he really liked your review of Kali Linux, Mary.
Oh, thank you, Frank.
And he says he wants to tell everybody about Metasploitable, which is a vulnerable written distro that's created by Offensive Security solely for the purpose of learning and doing pen testing.
Oh, I don't know if I heard about that one. Maybe that's the only one, and it was the one I heard of. But I've heard about those distros where they're just one big exploit waiting to happen.
Yeah,
exactly.
And then that's what you do is you set you create a virtual machine with that, and you load another one with Kali Linux, and you set up your own lab, and now you have your own attack set up that you can do your testing with.
And you don't have to do what I did, which was
Trying to attack our website.
yeah. And then they said that then my internet was just shut down for a half hour.
Right. So that's what the other thing he was suggesting is to, when you set up your own lab, you do a host only.
Yeah.
So the communication is only happening between that vulnerable system and Kali.
Yeah.
And he points out that there is a Linux Voice article that tells you how to be able to set that up. And it's on issue 5. So take a look at it. But yeah, that's how we run in my class. That's how we ran all of our labs was in virtual machines with host only networking. And I'm pretty sure VirtualBox has host only already as an option.
It is.
It's just you have to change it from NAT to host only.
Okay.
And that'll be just the hosts.
Yep. There's a host only. You can create your own subNAT, so you can actually create a NAT on your computer, or there's another option for host only where you can bridge those together. So it's got a couple different advanced networking options like that, so you don't have to attack a website.
Right.
Hey, you're looking at me.
Yes, we're looking at you, Mary.
I don't think I attacked our website.
You
Not
just
very much.
Listed any vulnerabilities we may have had.
I just ran that
Just
WP scan, which listed the vulnerabilities.
On a good note, that did prompt us to update WordPress.
Right.
And I had, prior to that Kali Linux review or the research I did there, I had no idea that there was such a tool.
Oh,
So
yeah, it's nice. There's nice things out there. So yeah.
I think I'm gonna, I think there's our neighborhood website. It's WordPress. I want to run it.
Yeah.
I'll send our communications guy over the edge. Hey, I just scanned the site. Here's what you got.
The funny thing is that most of that doesn't come through, especially if you're running on a shared hosted site. You're not going to see any of that unless there's a lot of attacks coming at it or a lot of scans. And then the hosting provider might come to you and say, hey, somebody's doing this.
Oh, well, they switched to GoDaddy, against my better judgment.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I'll give it a try and see. The worst thing that'll happen is
No GoDaddy.
Yeah, no GoDaddy. Yeah, no GoDaddy. Yeah. Anyway, well, so okay, there was that letter. Are we still on listener feedback?
We are. I think that's all. That's all I
all
have.
right.
That's all I
Okay.
see too.
Okay.
The other
Okay.
stuff, I looked through anything that went to spam, and it actually is spam.
Yeah.
Well, it may not be. I can't read it. It's in Korean or Chinese. I'm not sure.
Oh yeah, that one was bad.
Okay.
Hey, we started getting spam. I started getting spam about construction materials.
Yeah, I saw that too.
Yeah.
Not sure how that happened, but I'm not building anything. I don't build walls. I build bridges. All right, that's it.
You know, it's
All right,
funny.
we're not
though.
going political.
Right. There's another podcast, what can I think of right here?
That's okay, there's another podcast.
Yeah. No, but I host their website also.
Oh, okay.
I don't know, it's just blanking me. The Linux Livecast.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
And so I see their feedback and stuff come through too, because I subscribe to their feedback just so I can monitor it, and if there's something
Mhm.
broken, then I can fix it for them.
Mhm.
And so I see the same spam hits them and us at the same time, because I'll see it come through on mine and then come through on theirs.
Yeah,
And so it must be they just hit our box, sending it to whatever
whatever's there.
messages they can figure
Okay.
out. Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah.
Well, don't you have it set up to kind of go into a holding bin until you approve them?
On ours it does.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, but there's spam for
Comments?
WordPress and comments, and then there's spam that just email spams. come
Oh, for
through.
relays, open relay.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know why these people do this. What's the point?
There's such a low return on it, but they only need to make it profitable, if I understand it right, they need less than 1% of a return, and it's enough to make money, because it's cheap to
Okay.
send out emails.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's the problem. There should be an email tax.
Right.
Yeah. Well, the problem with that is then who
Who collects it?
collects it? and
The government.
Oh,
Come on,
clearly.
Come on, you guys, give it the program. All right, that last set of comments was a joke. I'm not advocating, I'm advocating better taxing, not just taxing. I mean,
Yeah.
if we're gonna get taxed, my hope is that the money is used efficiently and properly.
Yes, and it's just a hope.
Wishing and hoping. Okay. So I guess that concludes our listener feedback.
It does.
All right,
All right,
let's-
and
Let's get moving on.
let's put our pause in.
And that's the furnace kicking in way up.
Yeah.
All right, and next up is the hot distros, or what do we got?
Distro.
Distro fever.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So, and actually, the one that kind of caught my eye, actually caught both of my eyes, was, there was another release, a major release of React OS.
Yes, I
Which
see that
is
too.
the Linux distro that endeavors to act as a Windows box.
Yes, it's a
Uh,
binary, well, it's an attempt at a binary compatible operating system from the ground up. And how many years has it been since the release? I know it's been a minute, so.
Oh, it's
Yeah.
been 10
10
almost
years?
10
Yeah,
years.
about 10 years.
And they're all up to 0.4. And I mean, and trust me, I mean, no disrespect, because I think it takes a lot of work to do this. And I know we've talked about it before, but they now have gotten, I think with this release, there was a little note. I went through and read the release announcement, and they have now taken this particular distro to the point where NFS volumes, they are
Yes.
now compatible in a read-only mode, I guess. Hang on a minute, let me, before I
It's still, and I thought it was, I think, if I'm
yeah,
not
out of
saying
the
it's,
box.
it's still
support.
based on extent 2. I thought I'd seen that in their notes too.
Oh, all right. EXT2?
Yeah, EXT2, which I found kind of odd.
Yeah, that's really old at this point.
Yeah,
Well, but think about it, 10 years ago, it was probably, still.
if you're doing an update.
Yeah, that's,
And it's non-journaling system, so that's
isn't that like Microsoft, non-journaling?
Yeah.
I
actually
don't know.
no, actually and TFS is actually is a journaling file system,
Okay,
but
But we don't know exactly how it works. It's a mystery.
right.
It's closed source.
yeah,
Should go with the program.
well, and this, like a Windows box, this has a registry, and so what they are doing, or what they've done now is they want to make sure that I think they've gone, they said the project has gone to great lengths to make sure that it is compatible, and that it will correctly read and modify a registry from Windows, providing the ability for their own bootloader to be able to boot Windows 2003 successfully. Which, well,
They're catching up.
yeah, they are.
All right.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so that, I think that's the one that really, on the list of distros, that's the one that caught my eye. So, and although this is a development release, FreeBSD 10.3 second beta was also released back a couple weeks ago, or actually a week ago, I think it was.
All right.
So I'm not going to talk too much about it until the final version comes out, and then I'll be crowing about it. But
Sure.
it's good to see. Yeah, it was good to see.
You know, I see Ubuntu 14.04.4 was
Mhm.
released, so it's an update to the LTS version.
Mhm.
So if you're running LTS for stability reasons, then you want to do these updates so that you can keep your security patches up to date and everything.
Yeah, and Tony, in your spare time, the first release candidate for Linux from scratch is out. So put that on your to-do list.
Yeah. You know, I saw Rebecca Black OS was 2016.02.08 was released.
With the latest Wayland in it.
Yeah, so that's interesting. Is this the only, do you guys know, is this the only distro that's releasing with Wayland?
It might be.
It says
That I don't know.
it includes KDE Plasma 4.3 for the
Ooh.
desktop. Although they have used it with the various desktop environments.
Okay. Well, 4.3 is, the kernel is 4.3. KDE Plasma. Wait a minute now. KDE Plasma 5 and the 4.3 kernel?
Oh.
Never mind.
How did I miss that?
That's okay.
Sorry about that.
Well, that's quite all right. That's quite all right. It was just the fact that it was Rebecca Black. Who is Rebecca Black?
I have no clue.
I have no idea.
Okay, well, that's all right. It's somebody.
Right.
So, but what else? What else do you have?
That's
What else is catching your eye?
the only thing I saw pretty interesting.
Okay. Okay. Well, actually, Rebecca Black is she's a singer. She's an American singer and YouTuber who gained extensive media attention with the 2011 single Friday.
Now I know who she is.
Yeah.
I've tried to forget that.
Okay. I'm sorry. I apologize.
Now there's a song in my head.
Yeah. Well, don't install that distro.
Yeah, don't install that song in my head.
I think I blocked her out. I don't remember that one.
Okay. Well,
It's
don't.
Friday. It's Friday. It's an awful song, but it's super popular for no reason.
Yeah. It's
All right.
yeah. It's I'd play it for you, but I can't get sound out of my.
Let's not do that right now.
Yeah. There's actually a fun YouTube talk, and they were showing the peaks of the days that was played. And they said, we figured out what song this was based on what day it was played. Apparently every Friday, millions of people would play this song for a while, and they were showing how it trended.
And just so that you know, there are 90 million hits on that official music video.
Yes.
Mm.
So I think Rebecca Black is probably just making revenue off that. Can
Yes.
you imagine how much revenue?
90 million.
90
Yes.
million? I didn't play it to the end, so hopefully.
Every million
She doesn't
views,
get
is,
anything for
depending
that.
on how you monetize it, every million views is roughly $1,000.
Yeah.
So
So,
math that.
all right,
Right.
yeah, math on. Okay, well, any other distros that warrant our bashing? I'm kidding.
No,
No.
that's all I saw.
Our
So it caught my eye too. So
practiced eye. All right.
All right, so we're going on to news.
news.
All right, I guess that's big enough.
Right.
Cool. So,
All right. Who wants to start?
well, I think I'll go ahead and start. I think there are two things that warrant some discussion. One of which is the glibc vulnerability, which just was made, I guess,
Yes.
public. And I was, what was kind of interesting to me about it is I wanted to find out whether FreeBSD was impacted by this. And actually, apparently, the glibc that FreeBSD has and the one that Linux uses parted ways very early in the tree. And so that particular bug was introduced after the fact. And so as far as FreeBSD is concerned, it's not vulnerable unless it's using using some Linux emulation, at which point then
It becomes
is.
vulnerable.
Yes. So, and Tom, you may have some additional information on it.
Okay. So I'll break down as best I can in plain English why this is a huge issue. So the glibc, the particular module that's affected is DNS. So you can do, if you can set up a malicious DNS server, and then you could craft a malicious response and take over a machine pretty easily. They've already done some code demos of this, and it's very possible. Essentially, it's just your standard buffer overflow, but because of the way DNS works with UDP, you can set up interesting reflections attacks and send bad data through DNS, through crafting this, and own a lot of things. Now, DNS being a fundamental part of converting names to numbers in the world of the internet creates a major problem because this has been embedded in so many IoT devices and everything else. And a lot of them do not have an updated or a way to update some of their internal firmware. So this creates a bigger problem of you could have a device that's permanently insecure because it was based on this.
Well, as far as the article that I read regarding, BSD's involvement in that, there are, as far as your resolvers go, there are some configuration changes you can make that prevent it from triggering that particular bug.
And you could filter DNS on the head end. So if you're, and it's less for the consumer, more for the business. A lot of businesses run internal DNS servers, so they could easily add any type of filtering. They usually do DNS from trusted sources, but my concern would be a lot of these just general over-the-air devices, or these wonderful IoT Internet of Target devices that people have, and just how many systems and routers run on modified versions of Linux that there's no more support in the companies. They sold it 4 years ago. They're not writing firmware for it anymore. So that vulnerability is not getting patched in all those devices. There's not any incentive for the companies to release updates to recompile and fix the firmware in it. So this is pretty widespread because many of your consumer routers by default will provide DNS. They got that built right into them, a lot of the consumer ones. So there's a huge attack surface on this because a lot of by default they support DNS forwarding and caching inside there. So everything behind your firewall is usually picking DNS up from your firewall. Just Link says TP Link, a lot of them do that. Some of them do forwarding where they forward the DNS servers on from whoever your internet provider, but the ones that don't forward, you have their own DNS resolvers and then they pass it on. That's a big problem because if they're using that library, very likely they are. A lot of these are based off Linux. That's how we get open source software working on them. They're already essentially Linux, fundamentally small Linux devices for routing. So this is big.
That's a good point because when I first read about it, I thought it was only going to be the end user devices that were really vulnerable to it. And the big thing that, like, if you have a phone or if you have your own IoT stuff, make sure your phone gets updated, or make sure your your IoT devices, your Raspberry Pi, update those things because it's on the DNS query is where that attack happens. So if you can specify a specific DNS that you check with, then and that's a trusted DNS, then you stick with that one. And the problem is if it's a laptop and you're going multiple places, then it's hard to make sure you always have the right one. Because with firewalls, you can, like you're saying with corporations, you can block outside DNS and only use our internal one.
Right.
And that is a good thing. But if you're, say, if you were going to follow my idea is to try to use an external one, like you always know that the OpenDNS servers are the trusted one, and I'm not saying specifically those. I haven't done.
But that's a good point. But one of the other issues with DNS is that DNS is not sent in a secure manner. So DNS packets are all clear. So man in the middle is arbitrary, especially because they're UDP.
Yeah.
So adding and injecting into a stream malformed DNS packets is arbitrary if anyone's in the middle at all. There's no security on it. So
well, and if you have the ability to change your named.com file just to put max UDP size 2048,
yes,
that will.
I do like that the fix is simple.
That.
That you can just specify the framing size and go, don't get bigger than this because it's bad.
Because then I think it sends a truncated message back. And it says, hey, use TCP.
Right.
So.
Yeah, if the frame is larger. And really what it does when it comes down to UDP is that the request still sends out, but the person's listening there, the man in the middle is listening to the UDP. And because they're on the local network, they can send back a request or the response faster than what the remote server can. And that's where a man in the middle will happen.
Yeah, they can change the TTL, and because they're local, they can get right in.
Right, exactly.
Mhm. Well, it's good it's not the woman in the middle.
You know, it's funny, I heard somebody talk about that too, that,
Well, it was
It's-
actually, I can't remember her name. She's a security researcher, and she
Mhm.
calls it the person in the middle attack.
Yeah.
Hey, that's good.
That's
That's
him.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, the PIM instead of the MIM,
I'm perfectly fine with that.
right.
All right.
All right, what's next?
Let's see. Well, I think, as far as that goes, I mean, I had the whole Apple thing, which I think is going to get discussed.
On our next episode,
And we're going to go into.
everyone's heard of it.
Mhm.
We're going to dig into it a little bit.
Yeah. So anyway, we'll offload that for a little later. I think that's really all that I had.
Okay. So as of yesterday, the 20th, over at ghacks.net news site, they posted about what's going on over at Linux Mint. And essentially, it's a really low-tech hack. They got their website compromised, and they changed the download links for the ISO that were less minty fresh.
Gotta love that minty goodness, or that minty badness.
They did not
Gotta hate
compromise the torrent because that would have been probably too hard to see the torrent ones, but they were able, basically they just dropped in different links for the download to download from the attacker site as opposed to where Linux Mint want to. There is some type of backdoor that's installed in this version, and it's pointing at Bulgaria. So I'm not clear, and I think the analysts have not taken it apart far enough to really figure out
Mhm.
what the purpose of the hack was or what they were trying to do, but they do know it exists. They do know it's a compromised respun version of the ISO. They have already fixed it, so by the time you were listening to this, it's already been repaired. But I guess you got to think about that. Because a lot of guys a lot of companies, Linux Mint included, they don't directly, I don't think, download from their website. They usually point it at some different content delivery network to get it from. So you may not notice that you're downloading from a different site
No,
when you're
because you
downloading
usually
it.
get that save or open dialog box.
Yeah,
you're
and you
not
just
paying attention.
grab the ISO and download it.
Right.
And they provide the MD5 checksum, and maybe not everyone stops to check the MD5 checksum to make sure it's correct. And in this case,
Not
because
gonna
they
say a
had
word.
they had accessed the website, they had modified the MD5 checksum so it would match. It would not have matched if you downloaded via torrent, but it. Yeah, so this is kind of a bad situation and kind of a scary one. They got their website compromised and modified download. It's a really low tech way to get a
Mhm.
and how many installs they're getting a day. I don't know exactly what the download numbers are, but
Well, we know they're at the top of the list.
they're a popular distribution, so it's a pretty scary hack.
See, that's what happens when communism falls in those countries. They just turn to hacking. Just kidding.
Anyways, Kdenlive was in the news. They've been doing some code sprints to fix a lot of bugs and get a lot of updates. So I finally got around, and I think I probably did this last time I loaded the latest version of Kdenlive using using the latest version of Ubuntu. And instead of compiling it, I am just using their PPA repository, which gives me a more update to version than Ubuntu is providing. And so I've got some of the updates. I've been happy. They fixed some bugs. I have another one I have to report to them. It's a weird bug for editing. If you stretch like a overlay text, you can stretch it however many seconds you want. Say if I want to say Sunny Warner Lynch at the bottom of a video, 5 seconds, 10 seconds, no problem. But if you edit the text and close it, you can't stretch it again until you close and open a program. I found it to be a consistent bug, so I got to report that. And it was funny because that's what they fixed in the update.
We talked about.
And they
I
had
remember
fixed-
we talked about that problem.
They had fixed an editing bug that was previously in there for crashing on double click, so now it doesn't crash, but now it's got a new problem. So,
Oh, no.
but nonetheless, I'm loving all the, and it's a minor thing because it's not something you usually do. Usually you add a drop-in text and you set the length and you move on to your next piece of editing.
Mhm.
So it's not something that has been a major problem.
Mhm.
And it's really weird. It doesn't give an error. It just doesn't drag. You can type in the number, but it won't let you drag it over.
Mhm.
So really minor issue, but the updates have been great. They also on their blog, they have not integrated, but they showed some of the features they're going to be adding in the code sprint, which is some even more dynamic options in the timeline. So you can actually adjust things as it's moving across the timeline on the bottom. You'll be able to adjust the color. So instead of having to create segments, so I want the color saturation to be this setting for this many seconds, you can do it all in one segment and just
Mhm.
drag little sliders up and down. They're adding some really nice features. And it's interesting when you do video editing because you want things more to be sliders and that because you don't want to hard type everything in. You kind of go, well, when the scene changes here, I want the brightness to be a little bit more on like a slope. So they're doing like a series of Bezier curves, so you can just kind of curve it around as the lighting may change when you're shooting. So it's pretty neat features they're adding, and it's looking more and more like a professional editing suite, which it is a professional editing suite, but we're comparing it, of course, to Adobe Premiere, which is the editing suite, the Adobe products for editing. So they're really coming along great. I'm loving it.
Well, I wanted to mention something too, because I used Caden Live just about a week or so ago to take some video I had made on my camera. And, I don't know if you guys are aware of this, but I'm left-handed.
Mm-hmm.
And just to show you that it's a right-handed world, when I use my camera so that the buttons are convenient for my left hand, when I load the video, it's
upside down.
So it comes into Caden Live now, but the thing of it is on the phone, it's not. So I had no idea that I was recording backwards until until I loaded it. So then what I'm thinking, there's got to be a way to turn that around. And there is. There's a very nice. I think it's under the effects. I think it is.
Yeah.
Where you open up the effects, and I can't remember now. You probably know what it's called.
You can rotate it to a different.
Yes, and what's nice about it is that you have control over. Well, obviously, I went 180.
Yeah.
But you can control the degree to which. Yes. And you just drop it on top of there, and then it just inverts every frame in that video. And then when you render it out, it's perfect.
Yeah, no, it's really nice. And the new version also fixed the problem I had discussed before about pinning only one processor, and when you have 8. So that seems to be gone in the latest version. It utilizes all the CPUs, so it makes rendering much faster. So there's definitely some speed improvements when I was rendering. It made me really happy.
Yeah. So that's good to hear on that front.
Yep. Flight Gear released a new version. Well, Flight Gear is a flight simulator for Linux. I thought that was kind of neat that they're still in active development. I've never been a huge fan of the flight simulator programs, but it's pretty neat. And it always makes me think back to that was the de facto standard we used. Like, did you have an IBM compatible? How compatible was it? You tested it with Microsoft Flight Simulator. that was always like the standard for it. So I thought it was nice. There's still a lot of active development, and I'm trying to keep up a little bit. I'm not a gamer myself, but it does seem to be a driving factor as more games move to Linux. As the reason people, it's like their hang up. Man, I don't really use Windows for anything, but I need my game to work. And now it's nice to see that we have so many more games getting more and more active development.
Yeah, just speaking of flight simulators, I don't know if I've ever mentioned this, but when I was in the Air Force Reserve, I had a chance to sit in a flight simulator of an F-16. Well, we knew the guy that ran the simulator thing, the facility. So one night, there were several of us we had gone out to a little local bar close by, and he was with us. So then we all went back to the simulator. I had a couple too many beers, so I'm in the simulator trying to sim land this F-16. I crashed 2 miles short of the runway, and I got to walk away from it.
Those are kind of neat. I mean, it's kind of a neat thing, being able to simulate on there. And they've always, flight simulator has always been a popular niche for a long time. Yeah. So I like to see some more open source development on it. And people build some pretty elaborate simulators on there, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I'll have to look into that.
So I talked a little bit about open source in healthcare during our Fresh Lux 2, and now I realized after doing a little more reading, there is a company called Open Maxims, and they are an open source IT provider that's getting in the healthcare market over in England, and they've got a couple hospitals on there. I didn't get too much detail on it, but it sounds like they're basically an IT provider who has a product that's being open sourced. Their business model is providing support for that product, but hopefully this is more as we move into open source in the healthcare world, which I'd like to see a lot more of, because it would make everyone's life easier, being able to move back and forth between hospitals and having a common data format and just a common system between all the different hospitals, because that's a big issue.
Well, and just along those lines, there was a news bit. Los Angeles Hospital pays hackers $17,000 ransom in Bitcoin.
Yeah.
I don't know, Tony, if you're going to talk about that at all, but
yeah, I was going to talk a little bit about it, but there's
in your news items.
Yeah, and what it came down to is that it was just their EMR system was attacked by the ransomware.
Yep.
EMR?
Yeah, EMR is electronic medical records.
Oh, okay. So like emergency room something. Okay.
No, it's electronic medical records. So that's everything about the patient.
Yeah.
And that's how not only
They were
about the
reduced to
person,
using faxes and doctors'
yeah,
handwritings.
papers and right. But the bad thing is though, it's not just the about the patient. It's everything. Everything they do with the patient gets recorded and if they have to see when was the last medication you put in, then they go to that system and say, oh no, they need it, or no, we can't send it, we can't give it to them because they just had it, or a lot of things like that. And so it's been a good thing because it's dropped errors and stuff with medications, but then you have problems like this where it's a computer system that's possible to be hacked.
Well, they were saying that one of the reasons why the hospital may have paid the ransom is because their backups were not very good,
Right.
or they had not in place a good backup and retention policy.
Well, and this is with smaller hospitals, and Tony can probably speak to this better than I can, but with smaller hospitals, they don't always have the right infrastructure, so they just put everything on, we'll just get a RAID array. And it's great for redundancy, or they
Tony will
pair
probably be able to speak from the, we take care of our business stuff properly, right?
We do. We're a fairly large system.
Yeah.
The place I work at now, there's 8 hospitals and like 200 clinics, and so and we have a sizable budget. So just to give you an idea, one thing is a set of internet connections between the 2 data centers is $20,000 a month. So and
$20,000?
$20,000 a month, and that's enough. And that's just the internet connection. That doesn't nothing that's and that's kind of at the high end. We're trying to get rid of that data center, so that they're but just kind of give you the idea of a budget that you're looking at. So a smaller hospital, that all they have is an on-site data center, and they have
A couple of Dell
a
servers
lower
sitting on the shelf.
right. If they have a lower budget, then maybe they don't have the right or the amount of people that it takes to make sure things are done right.
And an example would be too, because
No excuse.
well, there's
I agree though.
yeah.
I
When
mean,
you have
they should
make
when they make their bed, they
snapshots
should make
and-
snapshots. Use a BSD system with
With
ZFS,
ZFS,
and
yes.
that is taken care of very easily.
Right.
because I've seen internal setups like this when there's they call it the what do they call it, the cowboy IT, where you'll just build 2 redundant servers and you can set up like master slave on a database on them, which is really inexpensive to do. But the problem is you've created the redundancy, I can unplug a server and we can keep running so everything looks good. The problem is if something encrypts it encrypts both at the same time because they're both live servers. So there's not
On the same network.
Right.
Yeah.
So you have to be able to go back in time, multiple backups.
Right.
And grab.
with versioning and things like that. Because I've even had clients where they've had backups as they thought they had, but they got hit with the ransomware, but their backups only had 1 revision. So if the encryption happens on Sunday and Sunday night the backup runs, it just overwrote and duplicated all the encrypted files. So
is there a kind of a rule of thumb or best practices for the number of backups you keep?
when we set people up, we generally set them up with 30 revisions.
Okay.
I mean, if you ain't figured it
like a
out,
month.
well, yeah, and if you ain't figured it out in 30 days that or 30 times that this file's been edited, that it's broken, well,
Unplug
I'm hoping
your
it just wasn't
computer.
important.
Yeah. And a lot of backup systems only do not only, but the primary or the quick backup is just the changes, just the incrementals.
Okay.
So most of your data will still be unencrypted. It's just, well, no, once it starts getting encrypted, it thinks everything has changed.
Yes, and that's actually the flag that gets set off for my clients to know that they've had a problem. Is they'll go through, and because I said revisions, and I meant revisions, not days. And the reason why is because if you edit a file this year and next year, it's only still 2 revisions, even though it's a year apart. So we keep these, what flags the clients is they get notices, an email, and they are used to seeing, let's say, 300 files or 200 files, depending on the size of the company per day that get changed. When they see that number spike, that one of 2 things: employees are playing with files that they are from old archives, or something happened to those files, because now it's setting a flag that it needs to back up all these files. So it sets them as what's going on. And we've had someone accidentally dragged and dropped a folder into another folder and duped the data.
Oh no.
Yeah, go Windows and dragging files. So they duped it and actually doubled up. Their backup went nuts because they just took an entire project file and, hey, well, if you copy paste the thing, it made a copy.
Right.
And it was only, it was only 600 gigs.
Holy
It
gee.
failed to back up because it couldn't back up 600 gigs in a night. And then we got a phone call and we're like, yeah, someone dragged it, dropped it. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, it either fails to back up or all of a sudden their internet's running slow because the backup
We have
is
it,
constantly running.
It throttles, and that's why
Oh.
it didn't complete in the time. It was still running in the morning, but it throttled down.
Yeah.
Anyways, yeah, the hospital thing's definitely interesting. Let's see what else. Arrow.apache.org. Now, where you've got some big data things out there, and Apache being the world's largest web server base, is really getting into big data now with their Arrow project. And this is a new project to help manage big data and do some analytics. And they have some interesting concepts that they're having there.
Now, doesn't Apache also have Hadoop?
Yeah, I think this is
Is
still.
this something, I mean, Hadoop is, well, you might, and I don't mean to, inject this here, because you may not know the answer, but this is something that's separate, because it handles big data in a different way.
Different way, and
Okay.
it was interesting, because I'm not completely clear on myself, but I was reading on it. It's really interesting. It's supposed to be way more efficient than some of the other big data handling processes.
Okay.
It can handle non-serialized data in memory and across different platforms. So it was kind of an interesting read, but it was nice to see that there's a big open source contender here that's really getting into some of this big data management. So. Back on the ZFS note we talked about earlier, ZFS will be baked directly into Ubuntu 16.04 LTS and supported by Canonical. So the license war is over. And
Good to hear. Everybody
Yeah.
kissed and made up.
yeah, I didn't
Well,
get
made
into
up, maybe.
details of what they decided on the license, but I'm just focusing on the headline that ZFS will be available, which is pretty cool. As I've been thinking about that myself, as I create more and more data, I'm having to put redundant hard drives in mine just to deal with all the videos I'm creating, because there's so many gigs of data, and I get worried about it. I'm gonna have so many archives on there and have a RAID array in my computer just for managing it. RAID arrays are getting cheaper and cheaper to put in your computer. Even though I'm backing it up out of my computer, I like the redundancy in there because, great, I'm backed up, but I have, half a terabyte of data to copy back if my hard drive fails. So I put it in a RAID.
And when you're talking about your computer, you're talking about your laptop.
My desktop.
Your desktop.
Yeah.
So this is kind of a workstation that
Yes.
has some server processes running on it.
Well, my workstation is just for my video. I have a RAID array in to hold all my videos. They're
Okay.
just out of convenience. I mean, for shooting and filming, and it takes a while to back it up. So it's
Sure.
backing up in multiple places, but then there's also the time it takes to copy back. And right now I'm just using, standard ext4, but I would move to ZFS right away. So yeah, no problem with that. So I'd like to see that they're getting it baked right in. So that's going to be nice.
Okay, yeah. No, I think I hit the table leg, and I don't know, I heard it a little bit in the background there.
There you
so
go.
Right.
My eyes were doing an apology.
Right. Just a awful side chant that Mary had sent me an article or tagged me an article on Google Plus a couple weeks ago about setting up your own like RAID-ish system with JBOD, and it makes it look like one big file system, even though you can have multiple sizes and multiple different kind of hard drives, and it looked really interesting and how to set that up and
Your next project.
yeah, that'll be my next project.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
and ZFS it offers a lot of advantages. I mean, it's the general end user who's just running Ubuntu on their laptop. They're probably not going to never notice or think about it. But for people like me or Tony, as we get more advanced stuff that we're doing with our workstations, it's really important to have it on there.
Well, and you make a good point, Tom, because when this laptop was running PCBSD, the default file system on that PCBSD is ZFS. So I was at Penguicon a couple years ago, and I saw Michael Lucas there, and I said to him, I said, Michael, I mean, I read about ZFS, and it's just wow, whiz bang, it's just all this great stuff. And I said, I've got one hard drive on this laptop, and it's running ZFS as the default file system. I said, am I getting anything extra by doing that? And he kind of said, well, not really, simply because of the fact that it's just a single hard
Yes.
drive and that type of thing. So I think the point I'm slowly getting toward is that Just because ZFS is going to be available in Ubuntu doesn't necessarily mean you want to automatically put your
No.
system over to it.
No, it's,
Um,
and even my primary boot drive is still gonna be a standard, ext4 SSD. But I have a multitude of hard
Good.
drives I'll be
And
having.
that's,
Right.
and that's when ZFS can really be helpful. And so I just wanted to mention that.
Yeah, no, that's
because,
an important point.
Yeah, because now my Ghost BSD system, which of course is FreeBSD, it's running UFS, so the Unix file system.
And IBM isn't in the news as they used to be, but they're,
Their stock has gone down.
yeah. Well, that's why they introduced some open source. Maybe that'll help their stock go up.
Yeah.
They introduced a open source development tool called Quarks, which is supposed to help manufacturers and programmers develop efficient applications based on IoT sensor data. IBM has a lot of internal programs, and I think to help foster more development in the IoT world, they're open sourcing some of the development tools. Because that's right now, when you have IoT, we want them to send all the data back. Because generally IoT devices have low processing power and that. So we want some good development tools for at least a little bit of filtering, because it does help. As I was listening to some other podcasts, I guess they call it the fog, which is where the IoT devices are before they create the cloud. It's a Cisco term I learned.
The fog, that
call
is
it the
funny.
fog. But if you can filter at least or consolidate data a little bit before you send it down the pipe. So that's what this will help facilitate, is better development of IoT devices, putting a little bit more intelligence into them. So they create the sensor data. And I think, some people have a good point, is it'd be nice if some of the IoT stuff anonymize the data ahead of time at the device level. That would provide more security versus hoping they strip out the data afterwards. Because I really, IoT, I'm a little scared to put some things in my house, because if I don't know enough about them, or if we find out they're based on the wrong version of glibc, they create an attack vector. We talked about, different ways you mitigate that, but Picking from the laptop itself. Yeah, that's the problem, is picking up from the laptop.
No, I thought I changed it to do.
I just see
So
you change it.
microphone. Oh, there we go. Maybe. No, I thought that's what was
Yeah,
on.
it is.
Save.
There.
Okay, there we go.
Now it is. Well, how did it switch?
That's
I don't
weird.
know.
Because
Hope it didn't-
you're right, it was working
Hope it
good.
didn't switch when we went live.
Well,
That would be horrible.
Well, Lloyd said that he said it was looking,
All right.
it was okay for a while, and then I don't know.
It's not loading updates.
Mm.
Well, that kind of screws our backup in case this other recording didn't work right.
It seems to me,
Take
a sip of beer,
we heard
Tony.
us on the light. Take
Oh,
a
yeah.
big sip of beer.
Yeah.
We may have just talked amongst ourselves.
Right.
I thought it was a good
We had-
podcast too.
Yeah, I agree.
I enjoyed the
I
conversation.
thought it was our best one in this new setting. Okay, we only have two. All right, so what's the name of this episode?
Okay, I think we got it fixed. Check it out. Oh, I should, and then I'm gonna mute my phone, so if he starts talking to me again, then we'll be in the middle of the show.
Oh, I have something too for what we did last week. I have another one that I forgot to talk about. I ordered another Google SMS card chip, text only. Have you done that?
What's that?
You can get a text only one?
Yes, Google Fi, they're sending me one for free.
For, what are they getting you?
You know, the little chip
Oh,
that
yeah.
is in here? I
SIM.
just sent off for another one.
SIM?
Yeah, SIM.
Mhm.
What did I say,
That-
SMS?
Yeah, but a
Well,
SIM
that's
chip that
yeah.
does SMS only?
Yes.
Yeah, they got one for
Really?
data like that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm, yeah.
What
Well,
are you
let's talk
using
about
it?
that when we start.
Okay.
It'll be our fresh looks thing.
All right.
Because we're going to talk about phones. That's technically what we're talking about. here.
Oh, yeah,
Apple
part
and
of it.
everything is.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah, yeah. Excellent tie-in.
My sister's
That's
listening
why
to
I'm
us
glad.
too.
Ooh, really? Hey, are my, okay, I am over this. All right, I had adjusted the headphones and I didn't think I was hearing myself, so I got worried. We're
I'm-
good.
I'm gonna go headphone less this time.
Headless.
Going headless.
Just like a server.
Yeah,
headphoneless.
really the only time we need it is because we're right here. The only time we need the headphones
We're
is
testing.
if we're talking, either testing,
We're talking to
and
somebody
then if we're
else.
talking to somebody else that's like remote.
Mhm.
So we have to go through Google Hangouts or something.
Okay.
So it's up to you. If you want to wear it, that's fine. It doesn't matter.
Oh, I don't have to.
Keep
I
your
can
ears
take them
warm.
off.
Keep your ears warm.
It did. Okay, all right.
Mm.
All right, gents, are we ready?
You know what? I want to say that I like the best thing about being in this new studio
Is
is
the
that
beer?
there's a kegerator. Yeah.
There is a kegerator.
Oh, maybe
It's
that'll
a
be, yeah.
Angry Beaver. That's the
Is that
Angry
name of the
Beaver beer. Yeah.
Okay.
It's Falling Down Brewery, right? Where are they at? They're here in Ferndale, or
Not
you
far.
know where?
I don't know.
Falling Down Brewery?
Oh, yes,
Angry
they,
Beaver beer?
yes.
Yeah.
They got some wonderful beer. They're local.
Can you imagine if there was
Michigan
a brew pub on Big Beaver Road that served Angry Beaver beer?
brewery. Yes. Angry
Way
Beavers
too
on
many
Big
B's
Beaver.
of that.
Right.
I always thought it'd be a good idea to have a liquor store on Big Beaver Road. Big Beaver Liquors.
Lord, save me, save me.
And for anyone who's not from our area, Big Beaver Road is exit 69.
Yes, it is. I took a picture of
That's,
that.
yes, everyone that comes to Michigan passes by and go, did that say Big Beaver Road exit 69? Yes, it does.
Our Department of Highways, it has a sense of humor.
Right, and there's a big dog leg in the expressway right at that point. I think they did it just so they can add an extra mile to give it
Yes, to make sure
to
it
make
landed
it
under an exit.
exit 69.
But it messed
There's
it.
an excellent use of our tax money.
Yes.
All right, well, we gotta get rolling
Yes,
here.
we gotta get to serious talk.
All right. All right. So this will be our Fresh Looks episode.
Mhm.
Fresh
Looks, what's the title of it?
Potpourri, right?
Well, it was
Talking
overview
color.
of the book.
Did we decide whether we do R or not, or?
Well, let's,
We're not
let's just
doing
talk about phones.
Yeah,
Okay.
talk about phones.
Yeah, keep it kind of short, and then
Yeah.
do your
Book
your
thing
review for next.
next time. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm good with that.
That'd be
That'll
awesome.
give you a couple weeks to, to kind of dig into the book a little more,
Okay.
experiment.
So what's the name again? Phones.
Phones.
Phone security?
Cell phones and you and your security.
Happy together.
There's just gotta be something clever here and I'm missing it.
Yeah,
Is
and I'm
there
trying to
something like
think
the
too.
president of phones or the phone president? Because that's really what it's about, right?
Yeah,
Setting a
right.
Well, it's
precedent.
yeah,
Well, it's your privacy and phones.
back door.
You look kind of awkward with the headphones on like that, Mary. All right.
There we go. I'll take them off.
Whoa. Is that right? Yeah, squeak.
They're not quiet chairs.
No, they're
No,
not.
but every little sound is transmitted.
Right. The thing is that because when they're lower, the what
Oh, did you hear that?
yeah,
I'm
the
gonna
thing
put
will
this on
cut it
because
off.
I'm gonna put this on because it reminds me to be quiet.
Okay. Yeah, every time I type, I could hear it
I could
going
hear,
through.
yes,
Yeah,
exactly.
sorry. So I tried typing quiet.
And I hear your chair. We're gonna have to bring some WD-40.
All right. Okay, I think we're ready to go. I'm ready
All
now.
right.
I know you guys are waiting on me.
No.
All right, so welcome to the Sunday Morning Linux Review. This is Tony Bemis,
Mary Tomich,
And Tom Lawrence.
and this is episode 182.
fresh looks, phones.
Phones.
Phone stuff.
All right,
Phone
we'll
stuff.
confess.
I think
Confess. We were trying to figure out a catchy title. Phone stuff. Phone security.
Phone security. All right,
Phone sec.
precedence.
Phone sec. Full sec.
Well, yeah.
I
well,
think that
say
might,
too fast.
if we say it wrong, it might not sound good. Sec.
Yeah.
We won't say the plural version.
Mm,
Okay. No adding an S to the end.
yeah, or changing the C to an X.
You don't even need to do that.
No,
Put an S at the end.
yeah, oh
Okay,
yeah, all right.
Okay, now it's time to get serious. So, yeah, this is our Fresh Looks episode where we take a fresh look or take maybe a different perspective on issues of our day or maybe a review.
Yes.
Right,
And this week it's issues of our day.
yeah, and what we wanted to clarify is that because the news may change a little bit before this episode is released, that we record a week before this is actually released. So if something happens in the next week, then what we discuss won't reflect
Maybe
those
completely
news items.
irrelevant. And then and then Tony won't post it, so we'll have a week where we won't have anything.
Yeah.
No, just kidding.
Apple made us decide to comply with the FBI,
Mhm.
and then this show will be kind of moot in terms of our discussions about Apple. But there's still some bigger topics that we really got to touch on here.
Mhm.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so anyway, so are we gonna delve right in or?
Yeah, why not?
Let's jump in.
All right. So what the big thing in the news right now is that the FBI is looking for a backdoor into phones and decrypting, and it's been going on for a while, for over a year now, that they've been trying to get in and being is it the default stance that Apple has, is that whenever you get a new phone, then it's encrypted?
Well, and this is where it gets a little convoluted. So the phone in question with Apple v. FBI right now is with the San Bernardino shooter and his phone. Well, the first issues have been resolved because he did not own the phone. The company owned the phone. So the company's authorizing Apple to do it. So some people made the argument that there's an end user agreement that was signed between the end user and Apple when they agreed to the terms, and then one of them is to keep those keys private. That's not the issue because he was not the owner of the cell phone. The company owned it. So there's the first legal hurdle that was overcome. Now, Apple does not keep the keys. They keep the FBI doesn't exactly want a backdoor in the traditional sense of, hey, just put this, poke this hole through here so we can get to it. The exact term in question is the 10 times rule. So if I type in the password 10 times, it erases the phone. So what they want,
You type it in wrong 10 times.
yeah, I just try to shoot. If you type it in wrong 10 times, because if they typed it in right, they wouldn't
Big
be over at
difference,
Apple.
big difference.
Big difference there. Apple has completely complied with the FBI. They have given all the iCloud data. They've turned over everything on there. But there is the time delay from the incident that occurred and the last iCloud sync. So it wasn't synced up. So there's a couple days of information that could be on the phone. It's kind of a phishing expedition. They don't know what's on the phone because it's locked and it's encrypted. There's also some confusion because apparently they did changed the Apple ID account password, which means that at some point they had access. That was some breaking news the other day that I seen. I'm not a
Well, wait a minute, they changed, who changed?
within 24 hours of the government taking possession of the phone, the Apple ID information was updated on the phone. Apple just revealed that the other day. Now, I'm not an Apple user, so I don't know exactly what that means if they had to have access to the phone to do this. But there's some
I'm
confusion.
thinking they had to reset the password to be able to get the iCloud data.
I think so.
Yeah.
So this is where things get a little bit confusing. But what their specific ask of Apple is, the passcode 10 times wrong, automatically erase the phone. They want them to disable that. So Apple's not breaking the security on the phone. They're asking for a custom firmware to be written for the phone that simply eliminates that option in the phone. So that way the FBI can just keep typing numbers until
Can
they
brute force it without being penalized.
right without
Right.
recourse without being penalized. They've also asked that they add a feature so they don't have to have some poor intern typing 1,000 numbers into the phone, the 4-digit passcode, that they implement like basically an automatic run through. So it just runs through all the combinations.
Why don't they just get John the Ripper?
Brute force, yeah. Well, the problem is that
Someone has to sit at the phone and do it. Some poor intern,
it's a manual system right now.
would have to sit there at the phone and literally type it in. And there's a time delay that is built into there. Now, even without the time delay, running through all the numbers based on the processing power of that model phone would take 34 minutes if they complied, so they could get it. If they can't completely comply and they only eliminate the backdoor, some poor intern will have to go 0001, 0002, 0003, and so on. And that will be their, I don't know exactly how long that will take, but I'm sure it's tedious and painful.
Yeah.
So those are kind of what's at question. It's really bypassing that feature of the phone.
And that's assuming that their county issued phone, because these phones are issued by their employer, has this kind of information.
Yeah, well, they don't know what the setting is because they don't know if the guy had it set to erase after 10 or not, because they cannot see inside the settings of the phone. All they know is when they turn the phone on, it's prompting them for the passcode.
Right, and you know, what's interesting, something I had read about this is that apparently employers have the option to monitor phones, and unfortunately, the San Bernardino, that government, or whoever they work for there,
Didn't have it set up.
didn't have it set up.
Right. You can do that, for example, on the Android phones. If you're a Google Apps subscriber, so you're using the Google Business Services, and you put the phone in the Google Business Services, you get that kind of fine-grained control, so you can remote wipe and remote control the phones and set them up.
I want to tell you something too. Yesterday, I misplaced my phone. It turned out it was just left in one of my friend's cars, and I had turned the location services off. And when you turn location services off, it's very difficult to find your phone remotely. I just want to say that.
That's true.
So I went in and I thought, you know, I have done a balancing act. Do I want to activate those, and then, or do I not? So anyway, I just wanted to interject that.
There's stuff to think about there. And so at the heart of the matter is, can Apple be compelled? Now you're taking the government and having a private company and telling them that please write this software. Now, because the software is closed source, there is no option at all, because the private key signing is held by Apple to load the updates. There's simply no option for the FBI to easily do this. I say easily because, I mean, someone could reverse engineer the key signing, someone could find a security hole, but looking for a security hole is not a reliable way to figure out how to get this information out of there. I did find it amusing. John McAfee couldn't help but take the opportunity to seize the moment and be in the news. So he offered to crack the phone so Apple does not be put in this awkward situation. And his backing it up, if you didn't see, if he cannot crack it, he will eat his shoe on live TV. So that's a soundbite I wanted him to say.
That's funny.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah. So nonetheless, he's saying that get into the private sector. There's some really talented hackers out there that could find an exploit and do this, or do some type of social engineering. I'm not completely sure the social engineering angle of finding the 4-digit passcode. I mean, I've seen plenty of people say, have we tried 0911? He was a terrorist. But you can't the guy's gone, the government's in possession of the phone. Either way, this is a really sticky wicket here. So we have we're not sure exactly what Apple's going to do and what Apple's defense is. Tim Cook has publicly said that he's fighting it, but Apple has not, as of the recording of this show, filed the legal papers stating what they're going to do.
And
Yeah, it's easy to come out with a press release and and just say something. And I know there's a lot of people that will come over there and say, what do you really mean, and blah, blah, blah. But when you do a legal brief or a legal response, that those exact words is the legal response, and you're held liable for that.
Yes.
well,
So I can see why they were holding off on that.
well, and I think this goes to what you were talking about, Tom. 70 times previous to this, Apple has unlocked phones for the FBI, but it was along a different
path.
vector. Yeah.
Yeah, and I tried to get some clarification on that because I've seen the people doing that, but it comes back to being a soundbite of Apple did this before, but it
I
doesn't
think it was
sound
the
like
old phones,
yes,
not the current ones, because the newer ones have updated security enclaves and
right.
New security options for the new iOSs.
Well, and TechCrunch, actually, just a couple days ago, TechCrunch published some additional information about that, and apparently it wasn't that they've unlocked it 70 times. It's just that they did provide some information from a phone, but it was not really unlocking it in the way that I think they're talking about now.
Right.
So it doesn't really apply.
Right.
And you have a lot of world governments really looking closely at this because other more oppressive countries outside the U.S., they would love to have a piece of this because then if they have a firmware that does some type of downgrade attack or disable certain security features, so making brute force possible, you can bet they're going to be wanting a copy of that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's the big precedent around this, is that if there's something that allows the government, the U.S. government to do it, then somebody else, either other governments or non-savory people will be looking to get that also. And just saying, oh, we'll keep it secure, it isn't the best. I don't really trust that, because
Now, we
if
know
it's there, somebody else is going to get it.
and so much of it's important is because of the case precedents. Now, Apple's phones are serial numbered. So every time there's a relationship of you and Apple, they have a secure serial number for each phone and a key signing that is tied to that serial number of the phone. So when they send out the updates, it's on there. So from the technical reading, not siding with the government, but they are correct technically that this would be, if they created the software update, it would only work for that very specific phone. But once you compel Apple to create this software update with that serial number for that particular phone, you're right. If I gave them the firmware, they could only use that phone and you could wash your hands of it. But we already know Apple's already receiving requests in other cases for the same level of same challenges. So all these other cases are going to be pending on this one, because it's not about giving the government the software. We know the software that Apple creates will only update this phone. Now, some of my other thoughts on this is the compelling, it's called compelling speech, where the government cannot compel you to give a speech. Now, that's an important case that was decided a long time ago when someone was told they couldn't release their source code. I believe it was Bernstein, in a case where it probably was related to the, you can look up the case, but it was where a guy could not release his source code that did some type of decryption, and the government tried to stop him from releasing source code. And they loosely, and we're going to have to revisit this again, probably all the way at the Supreme Court level, is software free speech.
And we only had 8 justices.
Yeah,
We're down.
Indecisiveness. I don't think this is going to get rushed to the Supreme Court, but I don't know. We'll find out.
All right, I'm just saying.
So you can't compel someone to give a speech. Can you compel Apple to write software? Because this code considered free speech. This is going to be possibly one of the arguments. This is why it's important to know how Apple's going to file, is can we compel them to write software? Are we violent? We can't compel you to testify on something that you are against or compel you to make a change. And me and Tony found a little bit earlier, there's not a real, people love to draw parity in the real world.
Correlations between tech and real world stuff.
But there's not a real world solution for this. If you had a safe company and they made a safe and the bad guy put his stuff in a safe and the government finds himself unable to open the safe, you can't go compel the company that makes a safe to make a less secure version of the safe. How's the real world equivalent to that work? Because the safe's a physical thing. It's already been built. This is different because things are more dynamic in the software world. We can push an update to a phone and break the security features on it. I guess with a digital safe, that would be the case. But if you make a physical device, same with lockings, people go, we really want to issue warrants and we want to be able to break down the door or just unlock it. Well, they can't contact the locking companies and say, can you produce a master key for every lock? That is not, they could do it going forward. Maybe they could produce a different lock system, but the current lock system doesn't support that. They don't have a master key for all of our houses. So this becomes a really interesting, uncharted territory where it's hard to draw direct case precedents, because even the loose one I said here of compelling someone to speak is compelling speech. They ruled that illegal. I can't make you say something, but now is software free speech.
Well, and, as far as I'm concerned, there's probably nothing on those phones.
There may not be. And it's a fishing expedition too, because there's
I
a
would never
suspicion that there's
do
something
any
on there.
kind of, if I were up to no good, the last thing I would do was put any of that activity on a phone that was owned by my employer.
Well,
Right.
criminals don't always do smart things, and that's actually.
But yeah, and then the other thing is that from all the recent terrorist attacks and the phones that are used, everything that I've heard is that they've been able to find everything they need without having to break encryption.
Yes.
That encrypted communications, like over the air, was not used in most of it. So it's more like code words and stuff that they used. So this FBI asking, and this is going on a different tangent, but FBI asking for a backdoor into encryption in general, or public
Well, as soon as that precedent gets set,
And
that
here's
game's over.
exactly. But what I'm trying to say is that there's no precedent of it needing to be done. Really, I mean, the idea or is that it's possible. It can happen, but it hasn't.
And if I put my tinfoil hat on, let's go down the rabbit hole a little bit of a couple of my other expanded thoughts on this. So let's say that they win and they say, okay, we're going to do it this one time. What's going to stop them next from saying, guess what, Apple? We find some people suspicious. And as Edward Snowden pointed out, we find a lot of people suspicious just based on the fact that they do things like turn off their iCloud syncing. They turn off cloud backup. They use a VPN. And once anyone who ever subscribed to the Linux magazine apparently made the watch list at the NSA as one of the Sun watch list. So let's say they target someone and they go, you know what? Tony has turned off his turned on encryption and turned off all his cloud sync, so we can't see it. So now, Apple, please create a modified firmware and send it to just Tony.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, send it to just Tony because we want it to automatically decrypt his phone without him knowing it. So they can then easily go on phishing expeditions because you're doing something they deem suspicious, and the phone you thought was secure just got a firmware update that broke the security on it, and you were completely unaware of it. So once they can compel a company to start doing that, they can start targeting them, and it creates a burden on the company to have to write all the software, and it lets the government have essentially what you thought was encrypted because you trusted them in their end user agreement. Like, well, you got targeted, and they told us not to tell you, but we sent a special update just for your phone, Tony, that backdoored it. So that way, if you did something bad, because they think you might, they want to use that as information on there. Because once you start that road of can they compel a company to write an insecure version and write it for a specific device, the government's going to have a heyday with this because we already know they want to target everybody. And with encryption being the default setting, that's the backdoor in to start doing this.
Yes.
Right. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, and I'm not
Open
sure where I
source.
should go with about it, but
Well, open source doesn't solve this either. So I thought about this. What if it was open source?
what if it's Google or
What if it's Google? What if it's
YouTube
them?
being compelled to, or not YouTube,
Well, it's the
Ubuntu
same thing.
being
What if
compelled?
Ubuntu gets compelled? Well, it becomes a very different thing because,
They're not U.S. company.
well, they're not a U.S. company for one, but with Ubuntu, they could send an update out that's specific. But generally, they send them out in general. But the reason an update loads on this is because it's key signed by Ubuntu. Could they backdoor in and key sign something specific to weaken security? Because right now, we know through the open source, when we look at the code, we know it's well written. The password that encrypted my hard drive on boot, all that stuff works really well and it's well crafted. But what if an update breaks what is there and changes it? And can they compel these companies then
You have
to
no idea
add the backdoor?
unless
You wouldn't know.
unless you inspect every update and understand the changes it makes.
Right.
Exactly.
and it'd be very difficult. So once that trust level is broken, I mean, when we were talking about Linux from scratch the last time, we all have to start compiling Linux from scratch just so we can create trusted sources.
I'm going to read the book.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is, though, even if I were to do it from scratch, I'm not a programmer, so I wouldn't be able to read through every line to see if there was something that was changed or happened.
It gets very difficult. So much of this is not about the one case. It's such a bigger topic based on that. So I'm very curious to see which angle Apple's going to use. Google, Twitter, a lot of the major companies have already announced their support. Of course, the EFF is right behind Apple on this because they see the writing on the wall. The government is getting quieter, going, okay, we can't force a backdoor by default, but if we can do targeting, and that's what essentially this is targeting individuals, well, they're just going to blanket target everyone who turns on encryption, blanket target everyone who reads Linux magazines like they're doing already, because you're doing something out of the norm. And once they do that, this is where things just go kind of crazy. I just seen there's an update for my Chromebook here, and same thing. Was I targeted? Was Google asked to release a specific update?
OpenBSD.
I should run OpenBSD or something not Chrome on my Chromebook.
Right.
Yeah, I thought there was a Linux distro that
There's a couple of them
that takes the Chrome out of Chrome.
Takes the Chrome out of Chrome. But if they can compel these companies, could they compel some of these open source companies? And
hey, are we getting an audio stream? I think we
should still be going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it is on our Hangout.
Yeah. Is there somebody asking?
Icecast. Kay Wisher.
um,
In the chat, we just wanted to check and see. But we can. Just wanted to check and see.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
We actually I haven't told Kevin that we switched streaming.
Yeah. Tell them to go to Podcast is Right and or get the app on his phone. We got an app.
Yeah. What is the app called?
Podcast is Right.
Okay. I knew
It's
that.
easy to remember.
Right.
So these are some of my concerns related to this. I mean, there's which angle is Apple going to play, and I think someone pointed out this. We think that Tim Cook is in compliance with the way Steve Jobs might have handled this, but I think he's being way more polite than Steve Jobs. I think Steve Jobs would have been media front and center, every interview, every news channel, everywhere he could talk and saying not nice things about the government and probably having to beep out a few things for his reaction to this. I expected maybe he would have had a more visceral reaction.
Well, speaking of political stuff, did you see Donald Trump voicing a boycott, but he sent it out on his iPhone?
Yes. Yes, we do love the irony of our of I want smaller government, but I want the government to be able to influence big business. Yeah, I completely don't understand it from a political perspective. If you're for smaller government, why are you supporting it? And it's funny, most of the other candidates have been pretty silent on it. I think they're waiting to see which way the populace goes because, well, they want to get elected.
Yeah, well, I think the person whose input I'd be interested in seeing is Rand Paul, because he's the one that has, I think, come out very strongly.
Yeah.
Of course, his campaign never got any.
John McAfee's running for president as well.
Who?
John McAfee, the guy who said he'd decrypt the phones. Oh, McAfee. Yes, he's running for president as well.
Is he really?
Yes, he is.
What is it, write-in?
Libertarian. So,
okay.
Yeah. So, and he's actually has a really interesting platform. I mean, on paper, I won't lie, it's an interesting read. He wants to beef up security in terms of cybersecurity. He's had a lot of comments on it, but he's got a lot of really good topics of how the government could be doing things better. But of course, he's highly on the side of Apple and does not think the government should even be approaching him. And he is, besides wanting to eat his shoe, he does have some pretty serious information in there of how to crack the phone and how the government can handle some of these things better. He's very much on the sides of he's a consumer advocate essentially for this. He's got an interesting position, and he's actually on the side of the people right from the get-go. We haven't heard from a lot of the other candidates, but we have heard from John McAfee. I guess he's a candidate.
Yeah.
I don't know what kind of traction he's getting. So
I don't know. He didn't come up on the list of people who got votes in South Carolina. So.
No. Like I said, he's pretty down there.
Yeah. So
like I said, it's going to be really interesting to see how this shakes out. I want to see which arguments are going to lead to this, and where this leaves us, because encryption, we're being the outliers, and the argument of, well, I got nothing to hide is never a good one. I mean, it doesn't matter. They should not be able to without proper warrants. We have a proper system for managing and mitigating this risk. We have FISA courts. We've got all these different ways and structures we've put in place so due process can occur, that warrants can be issued, and evidence has to be presented before they issue it. Once they've done this, and we've already seen the NSA completely ignores any of this, once they have the ability to compel companies to write in back doors, it's kind of game over.
Right. And I've heard, I think it was Steve Gibson had made the correlation that, in the past you've been able to get a warrant to be able to search somebody's house. You can get in, but they, for an unbreakable safe or an unbreakable door lock, did they go to the door manufacturer and say, you need to give us a special master key that lets us into this house or this set of keys?
Good point.
So that's where the difference is. That,
that's where we're in uncharted territory. They don't contact whoever manufactured whatever security device to secure that house and say, can you modify these so we can issue a warrant? And it puts any company that makes security in a really awkward position, and it has far-reaching effects way beyond phones.
Well, and that's why technology will eventually enslave us, because I have a feeling that over the long term that Apple will lose.
I really see it happening.
Because what's going to happen, hopefully, Tony, you don't interpret that pause as a break for something like that when you're editing. But I think that what's going to there's going to be, because you're going to have people that are going to be positioning that argument in such a way that anybody who is against it is going to look like they're un-American, or that they support the terrorists.
Yes.
And then it becomes very difficult to refute that. Because people's minds when they get set in a certain way, it's very hard to unset them.
Yes.
I mean, because I find that myself in terms of some economic things. I have to realize that central banks and those anyway, I have a certain set way I look at things, and I'm having to kind of unthink it a little bit. Now I have enough intelligence to know that unthinking it is the way I need to go as far as adjusting my perspective. But there are some people who don't have some basic knowledge about something, that take their position from people outside of themselves, and they just don't have the ability to do it. So they're just going to go with the wrong position because that's what they've been told.
And this is complicated. I mean, because there's not a equivalency in the real world that I can just use as an easy example to explain to someone who's not tech savvy, who's going, Apple should just give them the stuff. You get that kind of attitude from people because they don't really use tech, especially a lot of the older generation didn't really grow up with it. They're not into cell phones. They just don't understand all this encryption, everything. They're like, well, they just give them the stuff. You see that from a lot of them. I'm like, no, it's not that simple. This is such a complex matter.
That's if they own guns. They just give their guns to the government.
Well, here's an argument I have presented to, because I've had people who are on the far right, and I know they're big gun advocates, and I've asked them, I said, so should the government be able, this is one of my real world arguments I gave to them, and they paused them a lot. I said, should the government be able to create a system that disables your trigger because before they raid your house, before they do something? And of course, I have a relative who's the anti-government. No, never an electronic trigger. I'm like, what if they told them all they have to put an electronic trigger, and they press a button and all your guns get disabled? We see it in Star Trek all the time. We're heading towards that future, man. They press a button and all the phasers quit working. This is the same type of thing that could happen. So if guns become more electronic and they come up with a defeating device that says, no, we press a button and all the guns are now disabled.
It's not just push a button, it's an EMP pulse into the house, and then if it's
if you're in the Faraday cage, does that help?
It would.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
I'm remodeling my house. I'm going to put a new roof. It's going to have a Faraday cage in it. Solar panels. It works.
Hey.
So it really does have, the ripple effect is crazy when you start thinking about that. If they have these and they start mandating, or they have some enhancement through the firearms manufacturers that becomes electronic, and it's a well-adopted thing. Because they do have, there's a startup company right here in Michigan, in Ann Arbor, that has a fingerprint system, and it's kind of slick. Not everyone's ready to trust this yet, but what it does is, as you pick up the gun, it unlocks based on your fingers being on there. The idea is not new. The technology is new. We've seen this in Judge Dredd.
Yeah.
We have DNA
or FBI, or what is it?
Those are what we've
Movies,
seen,
yeah, a lot of
movies
movies
and
that
Star
have
Trek,
that,
but it's
yeah.
essentially an encoded system that instantly, because we've seen that we can do instant fingerprint recognition, so it identifies it's you and then unlocks it just based on the pickup of it. So we've seen a lot of locks like this. I have one on my phone that uses, we have the Touch ID in Apple, and I have the Nexus 6P, which instantly unlocks. I mean, within absolute milliseconds, it'll unlock my phone with my fingerprint. So why not add this to guns? But then once you've done this, now the same ripple effect can happen. Apple can compel them for this, and we can compel them for that.
And actually, I want to just inject a comment, kind of divert us off course, like I'm so prone to do, before I forget it. But talking about phones and talking about tracking and all of that, I had recently purchased, it's called a Nanny GPS tracker. Now, it's normally for kids. You put it on a kid, and then you'll know where your kid is. But I don't have kids. I don't have a dog. So the plan was to use it to track packages in case of package thief. Did I tell you guys that package thief was caught?
Oh yeah, awesome.
He was caught?
He was
No.
caught. He saw himself on the news, and that security system, that camera system that my neighbor has, because what it does is it video high resolution video, and then it puts it up on the cloud.
Oh,
And so it was so clear. The guy saw himself on the news. He turned himself in.
nice.
That's
Anyway,
great.
but before that happened, I was hatching the scheme to put a honeypot package out there with a tiny tracking device in it. And when I got the little Nanny GPS thing, I realized that, hey, I have to connect to the satellite so the position can be reported.
Oh.
Well, then I thought, well, I'm returning this darn thing. and then I got off that knee-jerk reaction. I thought about it a little bit, and I realized, well, you know what? All I need is, according to the directions, which I then eventually read, all I need is a SIM card that is text only from my provider. So I contacted Google Fi support. Have you had a chance to use them much?
Yeah, their support
They
are
are-
wonderful.
Oh my God. They're practically responding before I was done with my question.
So a quick backstory, me and Mary both have switched over to Google Fi, fi.google.com. And to relate to our topic, all Google Nexus phones for quite a while now have been encrypted right out of the box. You actually have to jump through some hoops to unencrypt them. So out of the box, they come encrypted. And Google is becoming MVNO, which is they are bought space on a couple different networks. So now they're a cell phone provider. And it's out of beta, and you can sign up. And me and Mary
We're loving it.
drink the Google Kool-Aid, and
Yeah.
we really like their phones.
It comes in 4 flavors.
Yes.
Red, green, yellow, blue, but anyway, I just wanted to mention that. So once I contacted Google Fi support with that question, and they said that it should be able to work, but it's only has express support for these various phone systems and devices. Now this little thing is not listed, but the fact that I can get the text-only SIM card for free, I just went ahead and decided to get it, and it shipped on Friday. I think I'll have it tomorrow. So I think in our next recording session, and we talk about what we did, I'll be able to report back about some tests with this thing, hoping that it worked and that I was able to test it. So anyway.
Yeah, no, that's I like to see that there's more competition in the carrier networks because with the manufacturers and everyone, and we're going to see how this plays out because Google's getting deeper into the manufacturing of phones. Google's closely watching this Apple case because
I'm sure
they could be compelled too. Android has completely become the major player in the market, but because it's distributed through so many different manufacturers, that's why of course, this is a San Bernardino attacker used an Apple phone, so we're kind of going to see what's going to go on here. Of course, the other question is if Apple complies, will everyone jump on Google phones or?
Well, I mean, they might, but I know that Google wants to take more control over, end to end.
Yeah.
So where does that leave Samsung and their very high quality Galaxy series?
Yes.
Is Samsung going to start to buy time on various cell networks and then become
their own? Well, also Samsung has their own operating system they've been developing for a little while too.
Yeah.
So
it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, the markets are getting bigger, and as they get more segmented, it's going to make it even more challenging for the FBI. So they need precedents to start compelling all the companies. And Ubuntu phone seems to be a little ways off.
Yeah,
Right.
and I think in no way should our discussion, well, I guess I'm going to say this for myself, be construed as being anti American or anti-FBI at all. It's just a matter of, we're talking about
We're pro-privacy.
security. Yeah, exactly.
So when the government's on the pro-privacy side, they're with us, and when they're on the anti-privacy side, they're not with us. We're not changing our stance. We believe people have the right to protect their information, and
I wore my EFF shirt today.
yes, perfect. You wore your Electronic Frontier
That
Foundation
was
shirt.
purely accidental. I almost wore my DSP shirt.
I spilled food on my Android shirt. I was going to wear that.
All right, well, you look good.
Smells
with
like
this,
coffee.
All right.
Yeah, but it's my cycling shirt.
Velo Detroit. Yeah.
Yeah.
They were going to put a velodrome in.
Yeah.
Is that velodrome is a cycling
Yes.
thing?
There
right?
actually is one just north of here.
Okay. Oh, north of here is not in Detroit, but
I know.
I heard they were going to try to put one in on the east side, and people were complaining. I'm thinking, I'm sure they could work it out.
People,
People.
I don't care what you do. Someone complains about it.
Yeah.
All right.
All right. Well, staying on topic.
Yes.
I guess what else do we have to say about this? Stay tuned.
Stay tuned. We're interested as well.
Mhm.
So by the time this show gets aired, there'll be some more information. So don't hold against us because this was aired before that information. But we're watching this closely because this has a lot of far-reaching impacts.
Mm-hmm. It definitely does. So, all right.
All right.
Anything else on this?
No, I think we've talked it to death.
No.
We beat it into a dead horse
Right.
submission for now.
Oh, and Tony will be older by the time you listen to this.
Yes.
Well, yeah.
Aging gracefully, though.
Yeah, in 3 days. 3 days from the day of this
Mhm.
recording date will be my birthday.
Happy
So-
birthday, Tony.
Thank you, Mary. So I thought, even though it's 10 a.m. in the morning, I'd have a beer.
Yes.
Yeah.
So to talk a little bit
pre-birthday
about
beer.
this, yeah, we've only done minor references of where we're recording now,
Mhm.
and really didn't talk about much. I don't know if you guys want to take less than
You're
5
from the
minutes. I think would
studios
give
of
us some-
Podcast Detroit.
The studio of Podcast Detroit.
This is,
It's the
Didn't
Sunday morning
did that
lecture.
sound like a good radio
Good.
voice?
So you can go to podcastdetroit.com, and these guys have put together a pretty awesome studio here, and are rapidly expanding all of it as they have a lot of shows that are broadcasting here.
Mhm.
They are the guys who started with IT and a D. So they started out with the concept that, hey, this would be a fun studio for us. And it turned out everyone else wanted a studio too. So then they said, well, I guess we could rent space for
Let's
it.
monetize it.
So they built up this
Yeah.
really cool, they went from a studio idea to an entire podcast network. So Dave and Bob have really been gracious. They're
They've been-
very reasonable. They have these really
Yes.
cool microphones we get, and really nice setup here with some premium equipment. And
I get to wear headphones.
yeah,
Right.
if everyone didn't see the pictures, we're surrounded by foam and everything. So this is all
Yeah.
proper.
Yeah.
It's a
big-
sound treated room.
big
This
cell
is,
phone.
we moved out of Tony's
Hey,
basement and
curtain
into the professional.
Yeah,
How's your-
actually,
Hey,
that's
Tony,
all.
how's your basement doing? Is it? how are
Tony-
the kid-
Actually,
how are
I'm
the
making
kids
progress
doing?
now.
I miss the kids. I mean, that's,
Tony's
Yeah.
walling in his little area.
do they wonder
I
where
It's
we
all
are?
his now.
Do they wonder where we are?
I've had to explain to them that you guys aren't coming over anymore.
So they can wake up
So
and
they-
stomp up and down on the floor.
Yeah.
Oh.
Anyway, so yeah, it's it's better equipment, better mics,
Mhm.
better
Better pizza.
internet connection. There's
and beer.
just
And
so
beer.
many
And a kegerator.
positives. Yeah,
Yes.
kegerator.
Yeah, I mean, the big positive for me, it's only about 5 miles, not even 5 miles away.
Yeah,
It is not far for, I mean, it's a good distance. It's right here in between.
I
So
think it was about a 20-minute drive.
20 minutes takes us
So
to get
Sunday morning with no traffic, it's pretty
It's not
easy
bad
to
at all.
drive in.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah,
I
I
guess
thought, yeah, I don't know what else. Different
we run out of things.
broadcasting, a little bit different broadcasting. They don't have a video broadcasting system set up.
but they're
So
working
we're
towards
using-
that. They're working towards a green room and video broadcasting set up at this location, or expanding right here at this. We're in like an office strip, so there's more room for them to move into.
Mhm.
There's also an app that you can listen to on your phone. So if anyone wants to, it's available on both iTunes and Android. It's Podcast Detroit. Just put that in there, and you can listen to the live streaming via your phone that way.
Yeah.
Cool.
So Podcast Detroit, and with podcastdetroit.com is the website.
Yep.
Check it out. And there's we said there's a lot of others, but there's like 45 now, right? There's a lot of
There's a lot of podcasts on here.
43. Yeah, there's a few. A couple of Encode Decode I've been listening to is one show, Encode Decode, and it's more of like a security podcast where they interview people from the area. And that's been a pretty good one. Another one's at M2 Tech. Have you guys heard of
Yeah,
listen to that
M2
one?
Tech's pretty
That's a
cool.
good show.
Mike runs that, and he's got a lot of different Michigan Tech news that he puts together in there. So it's nice local news. And then of course the guys from IT&D, they run their IT&D podcast here, which they interview a lot of local companies, and so it's nice. I mean, it's far-reaching. I mean, Michigan's a hotbed of tech right now, so that they right time, right place, and putting it all together. This is
And we make a lot of beer too.
That's right.
Yes.
You know,
Craft beer.
one thing is, if you've only heard snippets about the Flint water problem, if you go back a couple episodes on IT&D in the D,
they did a really
had,
solid episode on it.
a full 2-hour episode on the
Flint water crisis.
a little bit of the history of what's currently going on.
So the Flint River and the corrosion,
Yep.
or the corrosive elements in the Flint River.
Right, and what they project it to be happening in the future. And
Mhm.
it's a really good episode on that, where they have people that, a couple regular people from Flint, and there's a couple lawyers that were on there talking about it. And so it's a very good discussion on, just an overall discussion on the effects and what's going on there.
All right, well, I just installed Podcast Detroit. They want a lot of permissions, I will say that.
Probably one of those default ask for everything.
Yeah,
All right.
okay. Well,
Well,
I'm
I
just
think,
gonna wrap it.
We better. I only have 1% remaining on my laptop.
ooh, all right. So you've been listening to the Sunday Morning Linux Review. This was episode 182.
Fresh looks,
Cell phone, something or other, and things.
yeah,
Phones and
stuff.
stuff.
Phone,
Right.
phone sec,
Phone sec.
That was it.
Phone sec.
Sec. That's right.
phone sec. Yeah, like OPSEC, Operation Security, phone sec.
That's right.
Okay,
And this is Tony Bemis.
Mary Tomich,
And Tom Lawrence.
see you next time. Phone priv, there we go.
So
Right, you want to hit stop?
Yeah.
Goodbye, YouTubers.
Bye, everybody. Everybody who
we'll
enjoyed
stop
this.
over here.
Right. Goodbye, audio listeners.